The facility went dark. As consciousness faded, Keth'var heard her add softly, "Experiment concluded. You never asked what I was a librarian of, Commander." Her smile was the last thing he saw before the stun charges hit. Xenobiology and predator behavioral studies. Not at all, Lieutenant. The subjects have been very cooperative. Maya walked past Keth'var as if he were furniture, pausing only at the doorway. "Commander Bennett," the lead soldier said with crisp professionalism. "Are you injured?" The cell door exploded inward. Human soldiers in sleek combat armor poured through the breach, their weapons trained on Keth'var. He raised his hands instinctively, the gesture of prey submitting to predators. "Were designed by pack hunters," Maya said calmly, standing as another explosion rocked the building. "Predictable pack hunters whose behavioral patterns have been studied for months." "No," he breathed. "The defenses are impenetrable. Our security protocols." The alarms began screaming before Keth'var could process what Maya had just told him. Emergency lights bathed the cell in pulsing red as explosions shook the facility's superstructure. Through the walls, he could hear the distinct whine of human plasma weapons and the panicked shouts of Zephyrian guards. "No," Maya agreed pleasantly. "You've been studied by them. Welcome to the lab, Commander. Try not to panic. It upsets the researchers." "We haven't been studying specimens," Keth'var whispered in horror. The number flashed through his mind, 47 facilities, 47 harmless humans being held for routine observation. 47 intelligence-gathering operations that had been running for months without anyone noticing. "How many weak links have you captured, Commander?" Keth'var felt the walls of his understanding crumbling around him. "How many facilities?" "We're all librarians, janitors, cooks, and teachers," Maya corrected. "We're just very good at paying attention. The human you dismiss as weak is usually the one who notices everything. You're all spies, all based on behavioral analysis provided by your prisoners." Maya's reflection in the window showed that predatory smile again. The janitor on Kepler Station mapped guard rotations and psychological profiles for 3 months before the facility was liberated. The grandmother near Vega? She identified 17 critical structural weaknesses and 4 command hierarchy vulnerabilities. The implications hit Keth'var like a cascade of falling stars. The resistance attacks, the tactical improvements, the way they've been predicting our movements, detected nothing, because we weren't communicating. Maya stood up again, moving to the small window that overlooked the facility's courtyard. "We were teaching. Every harmless human you've captured has been documenting your species' behavior patterns, psychological profiles, tactical weaknesses. We don't need to talk to each other when we're all studying the same subject. That's impossible. Our communication monitoring, not directly. But humans are remarkably good at pattern recognition. Each facility follows the same protocols, uses the same psychological techniques, makes the same assumptions." She finally looked up, her eyes bright with something that might have been amusement. "Did you really think you were the only ones taking notes?" Keth'var's blood turned to ice. "You've been in contact with them." "I'm saying," Maya replied without looking up, "that your intelligence network has a fascinating blind spot. You capture the weak links and ignore them while you hunt for the dangerous ones." "What are you saying?" Maya had returned to her book, but her tone was conversational, almost chatty. Facility 12 on Kepler Station. They captured a human janitor 3 months ago. Harmless old man, barely spoke during interrogation. Facility 19 near the Vega Nebula. They've got a human cook. Sweet grandmother type, keeps trying to feed the guards. He turned slowly, dreading what he was about to hear. "Oh, Commander? Before you go, you should probably know about the other facilities." Keth'var was halfway to the cell door when Maya's voice stopped him cold. "And now I've added your species to my collection." She looked up at him one more time, and her smile was ancient and knowing. Maya picked up her book again, settling back into her reading position. "I'm exactly what you thought I was, Commander. A librarian. I just happen to specialize in predator behavior." "What are you?" he whispered. Keth'var's mind reeled. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to retreat, to put distance between himself and this small, soft creature who somehow radiated the quiet menace of an apex predator. "You're afraid of me," Maya observed with clinical detachment. Right now, in this moment, an 8-foot alien warrior is afraid of a 5'2" human librarian. And the truly beautiful part? You don't even know why. As if to prove her point, Keth'var found himself taking an involuntary step backward. For weeks. Your species has 17 distinct fear responses, 12 defensive behaviors, and 3 critical psychological vulnerabilities. The Zephyrian tendency to retreat when faced with superior confidence, for instance, or your need to hunt in coordinated groups because individual combat terrifies you. The words hit Keth'var like a physical blow. You've been studying us. I'm saying I've become something it instinctively recognizes as its superior. Maya's smile turned almost predatory. Humans don't just survive, Commander. We study. We adapt. We turn predators into prey. You're saying you've tricked it? The Vrex'tai's telepathic senses are reading my psychological state, Maya continued. No fear, no stress, no prey response. Instead, it's detecting the calm confidence of something that has never needed to fear predators. Something that studies them, categorizes them, and finds them interesting. She turned back to face him, and Keth'var felt something primal stir in his genetic memory. Maya's posture was relaxed but confident, her breathing steady, her eyes holding his without the slightest hint of submission or fear. Is it? Maya moved to the small table in her cell, her movements deliberate and unhurried. You've read my research by now. Super predator mimicry is a well-documented phenomenon. Certain species survive not by running or hiding, but by unconsciously adopting the behavioral markers of apex predators. That's impossible. You see, Commander, true apex predators don't hunt in packs. They don't need to. They're solitary because nothing can challenge them. And after spending weeks studying your psychology, your behavior patterns, your fears, she paused, tilting her head slightly. I've unconsciously begun mimicking those patterns. Keth'var's confusion must have shown on his face, because Maya's expression grew almost sympathetic. Pack hunters, Maya interrupted gently. You coordinate attacks, you have hierarchical structures, you rely on overwhelming force and numbers. Classic pack behavior. The Vrex'tai recognizes this immediately. We are the dominant military force in this sector. Maya stood up, moving with the fluid grace of someone completely at ease in her environment. Because you made a fundamental error in your assessment of both humans and predators, Commander. You think you're the apex predator? You're just another species that hunts in packs. Why? Why? I know. Keth'var felt his mandibles click involuntarily, then caught himself. The Vrex'tai won't enter this cell. Of course. You're the one who's been watching me through the security feeds, always positioned slightly to the left of the main observation panel, mandibles clicking in that particular rhythm you do when you're thinking. Maya's smile widened. You bite your lower left mandible when you're confused, by the way. It's quite distinctive. You know who I am. Commander Keth'var, she said pleasantly, closing her book and setting it aside. I wondered when you'd come to talk to me directly. It wasn't the smile of prey greeting its predator. It was the smile of a researcher whose hypothesis had just been confirmed. The energy barrier flickered and died. Keth'var stepped into the cell, his full 8-foot frame casting a shadow over the small human woman. Maya looked up from her book and smiled. Disable it. Now, sir, security protocols require. Disable the field, he ordered the guard. Keth'var stood outside Maya's cell for a full minute, his 4 hearts hammering against his ribcage. The containment field hummed softly between them, but somehow it felt inadequate, like trying to contain a star with gossamer threads. Keth'var stared at the image of Maya Bennett, still calmly reading her book, and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service, genuine fear. The kind that apex predators instinctively recognize as their superior, Mordak replied. What kind of creature, Keth'var asked quietly, makes an apex predator afraid? On the screen, the apex predator was pressed against the wall farthest from Maya's cell, its form flickering rapidly between solid and translucent. It was as far from her as it could get while still remaining in the same building. "Sir," Mordak said, pulling up another security feed, "the Vrex'tai has retreated to the far end of the facility. It's exhibiting stress behaviors we've never seen before." "She's not afraid," Keth'var said slowly. "She's never been afraid. Not of us, not of the Vrex'tai, not of anything." The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Maya wasn't exhibiting prey behavior because she wasn't prey. She was exhibiting the calm, confident behavior of something that had never needed to fear predators. The Vrex'tai's telepathic senses were reading her psychological state and interpreting it as a threat. "There's more, sir." Mordak pulled up another file, cross-referencing her research with known apex predator behavioral patterns. She's published extensively on something called super predator mimicry, where certain species avoid conflict not through submission, but by unconsciously exhibiting the behavioral markers of something higher on the food chain. "She knows us," Keth'var said, his voice tight with realization. "She knows our weaknesses, our patterns, our psychology." The display zoomed in on Maya's notebook. The human script was incomprehensible, but the diagrams were clear enough. Detailed sketches of Zephyrian anatomy, behavioral charts tracking guard movements, and most disturbing of all, accurate psychological profiles of the facility's command staff. "Sir," Mordak said, his voice barely a whisper, "look at this." "Sweet mother of moons," Keth'var breathed, "she's been profiling us this entire time." She was taking notes. Maya's eyes tracked the security cameras. She had mapped their rotation schedules within her first day. She positioned herself in specific locations during guard changes, always maintaining visual contact with the corridor beyond her cell. When alien personnel walked past, she would look up from her book, but not in the way prey looked at predators. The screens filled with weeks of security camera recordings from Maya's cell. At first, Keth'var saw what he expected, a human reading, eating, sleeping. But as Mordak enhanced the footage and adjusted the playback speed, subtle patterns emerged. "Do it, sir," Mordak said quietly. "Should I review her containment footage?" The footage continued. When the shock troops approached Maya, she didn't resist. She didn't plead. She simply allowed herself to be taken, her eyes never leaving the soldiers' faces. She was memorizing their behavior patterns. "She's observing," Keth'var realized with growing unease. "She's studying us." She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was standing in the middle of the street, completely calm, watching the raiders with what could only be described as professional interest. The holographic display shifted to show security footage from the raid on Colony 7. Keth'var watched as Zephyrian shock troops swept through the human settlement, civilians screaming and running in panic. Then he saw Maya. "Sir," Mordak said hesitantly, "there's something else." Her capture report. "This is comprehensive," Keth'var muttered, scrolling through pages of behavioral diagrams and psychological profiles. "She studied everything from Terran Great Whites to Andorian phase hunters." Mordak expanded the file. Maya Bennett had published 17 papers on the subject, including detailed analyses of how apex predators selected prey, how they responded to different environmental stimuli, and most interestingly, how they reacted to potential threats that didn't exhibit traditional prey behavior. "Wait," Keth'var said, leaning closer. "Go back to that last one. Apex predator psychology." The display shifted to show a modest list of academic papers. At first glance, they appeared harmless enough. Dry, scholarly articles about animal behavior patterns, predator-prey relationships, and something called apex predator psychology in controlled environments. "Xenobiology?" Keth'var's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Show me her publication record." "Specialized collection, sir. She managed the xenobiology and behavioral sciences section." Keth'var studied the data streaming across the screens. Born on Earth, educated at various human institutions, employed in what appeared to be a completely mundane profession. What kind of librarian? Yes, sir, Mordak replied, his 6 fingers dancing across the interface. Maya Bennett, age 32, occupation, librarian at the Terran Central Archive. No military service, no combat training, no criminal record. She was captured during a routine civilian sweep of the outer colonies. Pull up everything we have on the human female, he barked at Chief Analyst Mordak, who was hunched over a bank of holographic displays. I want her complete file, capture records, behavioral assessments, everything. Keth'var stormed into the facility's central data hub, his ceremonial plates rattling with each heavy step. The Vrex'tai situation had gone from triumph to nightmare in the span of 3 hours, and he intended to find out why. Get me a direct line to the facility, Keth'var ordered, his voice tight with growing unease. I want to know exactly what that human is doing. The apex predator, the creature that had systematically eliminated 3 entire civilizations, was retreating from a 5'2" human librarian who was reading a book about Keth'var squinted at the enhanced camera feed animal behavior. I don't know, sir. But the Vrex'tai just took another step back. At what? Keth'var demanded. Did she just smile? Technician Zaldi asked. Maya Bennett chose that moment to look up from her book. She glanced at the security camera in the corner of her cell, then at the door. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Then she returned to her reading. What in the 7 hells is wrong with the human female? Her Vorthake's tentacles writhed with agitation. The facility's atmospheric systems hummed to life, pumping concentrated fear pheromones into the corridor. The Vrex'tai should have been driven into a feeding frenzy. Instead, it retreated another step. Try the pheromone dispensers, General Thexmore suggested desperately. Flood the area with prey scent. But the evidence was undeniable. The Vrex'tai was backing away from Maya's cell, its semi-transparent form flickering more rapidly than before. Its 6 limbs were drawn close to its body in what could only be described as a defensive posture. Fear responses? Keth'var's mandibles clicked in disbelief. That thing doesn't know fear. It is fear, sir, Zaldi called out, her voice tight with confusion. The creature's biochemistry is showing patterns we've never seen before. Stress hormones are spiking. Fear responses are active. This is impossible, Dr. Quintel whispered, his optical enhancers clicking rapidly. The Vrex'tai has never shown hesitation, ever. It's a perfect predator. The technicians frantically worked their controls, sending electrical impulses through the Vrex'tai's neural pathways. The creature twitched, took 1 step forward, then immediately stepped back. If anything, it seemed to retreat further from Maya's cell. Then make some. Use the control implants. Sir, we don't have override protocols for. Force entry protocols, Keth'var ordered. Override the creature's hesitation. The observation deck fell silent. Through the security cameras, they could see Maya Bennett sitting cross-legged on her cell floor, completely absorbed in her book. She appeared utterly calm, occasionally turning a page with casual indifference. She didn't even seem to notice the apex predator standing outside her door. No, sir. I mean, it's distressed. Elevated? General Thexmore's voice cracked. You mean it's excited? Technician Zaldi frowned at her readouts. I'm not sure, sir. The creature has ceased all forward movement. Vital signs are elevated. What's happening? Keth'var demanded. The creature stood motionless in the corridor, its void face oriented toward Maya's containment area. It didn't move. It didn't phase through the wall. It just stood there, and then it stopped. The Vrex'tai moved to the 3rd cell, Maya Bennett's cell. The creatures are even easier than we anticipated, Keth'var observed with satisfaction. Perhaps we overestimated human resilience. 28 seconds. The 2nd cell contained a human female, a scientist who had been working on some sort of resistance technology. The Vrex'tai's approach was identical. Raise, hunt, kill. 31 seconds. The Vrex'tai glided down the corridor, its semi-transparent form flickering between solid and smoke. It had reached the human containment area. The first cell held a human male, a former soldier who had been captured during the siege of Proxima Base. The creature paused, tilted its head, and phased through the wall. "Next section," Quintel said, consulting his display. "The creature should reach them within minutes." Keth'var nodded approvingly. "And the humans?" "Telepathic prey detection is functioning perfectly," reported technician Zaldi from her monitoring station. "It's reading fear hormones, stress pheromones, even subconscious survival instincts. The creature knows exactly where every living being is and how afraid they are." The Vrex'tai paused at each doorway, its void-like head tilting as if listening to something only it could hear. Then it would phase through the walls, and the screaming would begin. And then stop. "Magnificent," breathed Dr. Quintel, his optical enhancers whirring as he tracked the creature's movement. "Look at that efficiency. No wasted motion, no unnecessary violence. Just perfect predation." The Vrex'tai moved through the facility like death itself had learned to walk. Keth'var watched from the observation deck as the creature methodically cleared each containment area with surgical precision. The Corellian specimens lasted exactly 37 seconds. The Plasma Collective volunteers? 42 seconds, and that was only because they could briefly phase shift themselves. The hunt began. Release in 3, 2, 1. The containment field around the Vrex'tai began to lower. "Finally," Keth'var muttered, his confidence returning as he watched the small human woman turn a page. "Something that will show these creatures their proper place in the universe. No more pretending they're anything special." The display shifted to show the testing facility, a maze of corridors and chambers, each containing different alien species. Keth'var could see the humans in their separate sections, including Maya Bennett still sitting peacefully with her books. "We've prepared a controlled environment," Quintel explained, pulling up facility schematics. "Various specimens from different species, including some of our human prisoners. We'll release one Vrex'tai and observe its hunting patterns. Consider it a preview of what's coming for the rest of humanity." Keth'var found himself nodding despite his unease. The logic was sound, even if the method was terrifying. "What's the testing protocol?" "Precisely." Vrex'tai's excitement was almost manic now. "The human rebellion has been gaining ground across 12 sectors. Traditional military approaches have proven inadequate. But the Vrex'tai represents the ultimate solution, a predator so perfect that even the most stubborn human resistance will crumble before it." General Vrex'tai's voice cracked slightly. "And you want to use this thing against the humans?" "Not wiped out," Vrex'tai corrected with disturbing enthusiasm. "Hunted, systematically. The Vrex'tai don't just kill, they perfect the art of killing. Each species they encounter becomes a study in optimal predation techniques." The room fell silent. Even Keth'var, who had seen his share of galactic conflicts, felt a chill run down his spine. "They wiped out entire civilizations?" Vrex'tai's tentacles writhed with satisfaction. "3 civilizations have encountered them. The Korith Empire, the Plasma Collective, and the Hegemony of Worlds. All 3 civilizations no longer exist." "It learns," Quintel replied grimly. "Each kill makes it smarter, faster, more efficient. The species has no natural predators because, well, there's nothing above them on any food chain." "Adaptation?" Keth'var asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Dr. Quintel consulted his trembling datapad. Apex Predator designation Vrex'tai, recently discovered in the Outer Rim. Capabilities include phase shifting through solid matter, telepathic prey location, and complete biological adaptation to any environment. "Sweet mother of moons," breathed General Vrex'tai, his carapace unconsciously tightening. "What in the 7 hells is that thing?" The creature on the screen defied easy description. Roughly humanoid in shape but standing 9 feet tall, its body seemed to exist in a constant state of semi-transparency. One moment it appeared solid and black as obsidian, the next it flickered like smoke, its edges bleeding into the surrounding air. 6 elongated limbs ending in razor-sharp talons extended from its torso, and where its face should have been, there was only a void that seemed to absorb light itself. "Gentlemen," Vrex'tai announced, his voice carrying a tremor of barely contained glee, "I present our solution to the human problem. The Vrex'tai." 3 weeks later, Keth'var stood in the same briefing room, but this time the atmosphere was electric with genuine excitement rather than condescending amusement. The holographic display now showed something that made even his battle-hardened sensibilities twinge with unease. Keth'var nodded approvingly. At least watching the harmless little creature might provide some entertainment between real military operations. Biolab 7, Vrex'tai decided. Maximum security, but comfortable. "We'll observe her behavior patterns." "Well," he said, standing to his full 8-foot height, "I suppose we should put her somewhere safe. Wouldn't want our dangerous specimen to get hurt before we can study her properly." The room filled with renewed laughter. Keth'var found himself wondering if this was some elaborate human deception, but looking at Maya Bennett's small frame and gentle demeanor, he dismissed the thought immediately. "Actually," Vrex'tai said, consulting his datapad, "that's exactly what she is. Librarian. No military record, no combat experience, no specialized training. Just books. Fascinating," Keth'var muttered, though his tone suggested anything but fascination. "The humans send their warriors to die in battle, and we capture their librarians." Maya Bennett sat cross-legged on her containment cell floor, reading what appeared to be a primitive paper book. Her brown hair fell in unremarkable waves around her shoulders, and her plain clothes made her look like she'd been plucked from some mundane civilian gathering. She looked up occasionally, seeming more curious than frightened. "And those eyes," snorted Dr. Quintel, adjusting his optical enhancers. "Only 2 of them. How do they watch for threats?" The other council members erupted in what passed for laughter among their species. General Thex Moore's carapace rattled with mirth. "Look at those tiny limbs. How do they even lift their own body weight?" "This one," Vrex'tai continued, highlighting a particularly small specimen, "appears to be their weakest example. Email designation, Maya Bennett. Height, 5 feet, 2 inches. Weight, 115 pounds. No visible weapons, no apparent combat training." Keth'var's mandibles clicked in barely concealed amusement. The creatures were underwhelming. Bipedal, sure. Soft-skinned, definitely. But dangerous? The council had to be joking. "Behold," announced Council Leader Vrex'tai with far too much enthusiasm, "the specimens we've collected from the human homeworld." His tentacles gestured dramatically toward the observation screens, showing various holding cells. Commander Keth'var adjusted his ceremonial shoulder plates and tried not to roll his 4 eyes as he stared at the pathetic display before him. The Galactic Council's pristine briefing room, with its gleaming chrome surfaces and holographic star charts, had been transformed into what could only be described as a zoo exhibit review.